what is the bad news we already know is that the dimension of the future has disappeared. That in some ways that we're marooned, we're trapped in the 20th century still. That what is it to be in the 21st century? It's to have 20th century culture on higher definition screens, or 20th century culture distributed by high speed internet. Actually, so there's a strange, what ought to be a strange sense of repetition of a clotted or blocked time, a time that's in many respects slowed down or flattened or retarded or gone backwards, where the sense of a forward momentum of culture, which isn't the same as a progress. I'm not arguing that what has disappeared is a sense of the progressive in culture, as if somehow 90s jungle had progressed above Robert Johnson. I'm not arguing that. What I'm arguing is that the thing that's disappeared is a sense of difference, or a sense of the specificity, the sense of culture belonging to a specific moment. That is what has disappeared in the 21st century. So there's now a feeling that nothing ever really dies, but that's not good. That means that we are assailed on all sides by kind of zombie forms which persist forever, by revivals. Anything can come back. Anything can come back. There's a kind of we might say an excessive tolerance for the archaic. But part of the problem is since the sense of historicity has waned, has declined, it's difficult to characterize anything as archaic anymore. What does it mean to say something's archaic in a situation when practically everything feels old? The phrase that captured this for me, and which I use at the start of Ghost of My Life from Franco Berardi, is the slow cancellation of the future. The slow cancellation of the future, I think, which captures not only that sense of termination, but the gradual nature of it. Of course, it's not that the future in culture disappears overnight. It withers. We might look back upon boredom as somewhat utopian proposition now, in many ways. The dialectics of boredom coming out of situationists and going into punk. What are the politics of boredom? The idea of boredom as a kind of existential challenge. That boredom presents us with the blankness of death. The necessity for us to actually do something. It's a kind of existential injunction. That's been eliminated now. That boredom 1.0 no longer exists. I'd say we're now in a period. My slogan for this would be: no one is bored, everything is boring. That why? What do I mean by that? Well, no one is bored because we're all inundated by micro-stimuli, and seamless micro-stimuli. So the point at we're at a bus stop where you previously would have been bored, now, what was the first thing we do? We reach for our phones in order to cover over the kind of terror of boredom. But it doesn't really get rid of, that gets rid of our experience of boredom, but it doesn't stop things being boring. I think the particular lure of a lot of 21st century culture is this mixture of curiosity and boredom at the same time. We're sort of bored even as we're curious about things, actually. that kind of engine of, as we're kind of insomniacally drifting through social media at night, we're kind of, with some level, we're bored even while we're kind of curious. But since there's no reprieve from the urgencies of cyberspace, that's what I mean by no one is bored. We don't have the freedom to be bored anymore, because on another level we're tethered in. We're kind of we're fascinated even as we are bored, and we're distracted from our own boredom. We're distracted from the boring nature of things by the fact that we're always we're subject to these kind of idiotic compulsion. And again, I think that there's a lot of Bifo's work on this is very important. The inundation of the nervous system by stimuli, producing this insomniac state of where it's no longer possible to dream anymore. And actually, there's a quite an interesting post on the Plan C website from this anonymous group called the Institute of Precarious Consciousness or something like that, where they argue we've really shifted from an age of boredom, to an age of anxiety. That with Fordism, the previous regime, dominant regime in capitalism, presented the problem of boredom. You're in a factory for 40 years. That's boring. You don't want to do it. Capitalism solved that problem. It solved it in a way that always solves everything by kind of the fairy tale genie solution, which is okay. You don't want to be bored. I'll make sure you're not bored. You'll be anxious forever. And this the kind of that's this sense of kind of universal anxiety. I think is another thing which prevents us from experiencing boredom anymore, which doesn't stop culture being boring. Culture is boring, but there's no one who isn't preoccupied all the time who can access this boredom. So I think what this calls for then is a politics of time and understanding these different qualitative experiences of time and how they this is the attack on that unpressured, unstressed, that time free of urgencies is part of the domination of capitalism over culture at the moment. And one can almost posit this as a metaphysical level struggle. There's a set of forces that want us to be permanently anxious, permanently have our attention permanently fragmented, permanently dispersed, and that is definitely winning. That's the dominant force at the moment against another kind of sense of time, another kind of attractor, which is where towards this unpressured, expansive, more open sense of time, which is now kind of radically fugitive. I think it's very, very hard to get hold of that.